Welcome back. As we mentioned earlier, we hit 5 million U.S. cases yesterday. For some perspective, the first COVID-19 case in the United States is believed to have occurred on February 6th. We hit 1 million cases on April 28th, 82 days later. It then took just 43 days to hit the 2 million mark on June 10th. We hit the 3 million mark on July 7th. That was 27 days later. Then just 16 days later, we reached 4 million U.S. cases on July 23rd. And again, it took us just 16 days to hit this 5 million reported case number right here in the United States. Joining me now is Dr. Tom Inglesby. He's the director of the Center for Health Security of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Dr. Inglesby, welcome back to Meet the Press. I want to get a little big picture here. You know, last week you put out a lengthy list of 10 recommendations. You guys didn't call it a reset, but sort of like, how do we get control of this virus now? Another one of your colleagues in the larger sense, Michael Osterholm, is an op-ed. He's basically calling for a reset of some sort. New York Times today, editorial page calling for this. It feels, though, as public health officials are all calling for some sort of reset, partial lockdowns, things like this, and yet we are not having that conversation at all on the political side of things. Are we doomed to sort of live with this virus now if we're not going to at all look at your recommendations?
I don't think we're doomed to this fate. I think we know what to do. Other countries have done it. I think the purpose of these resetting reports and these calls for a kind of a reestablishment of the basics is that we know that in other countries, universal masking, physical distancing, avoiding large gatherings, those kinds of things have worked. If we look at countries like Italy and Spain and France, they have a total of about 7 or 8 deaths a day, and we have 1,000. But it's not magic what they did. We know what they did. So I think if we act together in national unison, we can get there. And that's what the purpose of these, I think many of these reports are.
I want to bring up the issue of masks. Dr. Osterholm wrote this. Some have claimed that the widespread use of masks is enough to control the pandemic. But look, let's face reality. We support the wearing of masks by all Americans, but masking mandates and soft limitations on indoor crowds in places such as bars and restaurants are not enough to control this pandemic. There have been some people that said if we had 95% compliance on mask wearing, we could sort of get this virus under control. Is that unrealistic? Do we need to do more than just mandating masks?
We do. I think masks are not alone. Not by themselves or alone the solution, but they are a critical part of it. We know that physical distancing makes a big difference. We know that large gatherings are places where super spreading events occur and people have the opportunity, or the virus has the opportunity, to get around quickly and really infect many people at once. So we have to do a number of things together in terms of, simple things like diagnostic testing results coming back much more quickly. It's unacceptable for the country to have testing come back a week or even 2 weeks later. It's not useful at that point. There's no point in even doing the test. So we have a number of things that we have to do, but they're not complicated. They may be hard, but we have to do them kind of in unison.
I know all of those, they're not hard, except when the word politics gets involved, it makes everything seem a little bit harder, and I want to keep you out of the political space here. Let me ask you a question about vaccines and to sort of set expectations. Dr. Fauci implied that the first vaccine that we get, he hopes it's 75% effective. The FDA has said they will approve any vaccine that's at least 50% effective. Can you explain to the public what that means, what it means and what it doesn't mean, and what our expectations should be for the first vaccine?
Well, we know that many of the vaccines that we use are not perfect. They don't prevent every case of disease, but if they prevent a substantial portion of disease, then that can help us get to a point where most of us are protected. The disease can't spread quickly between people anymore. a concept that is called herd immunity. Herd immunity doesn't mean we won't have the disease anymore. It means it's not going to as efficiently spread in an epidemic form.
And is there a percentage figure in your mind that you think will sort of give us a huge step in the right direction? Is it a vaccine that is at 75%, or does 50%, do you fear that could be a false sense of hope?
Well, I think we would take 50% because it's 50% is a lot better than what we have now. We have no tools no vaccine tools or medicine tools that we can use to slow this down. So 50% would be far better than what we have now. Of course, I think we all want something that is 75, 85, 90% effective, but we'll have to see what we get. And I think for the amount of time that has passed since the beginning of this pandemic, to have a vaccine that's even 50% effective in the coming months or the beginning of 2021 would be phenomenal. But again, we hope it's better, but 50% would be better than what we have now.
As we debate how we open our school systems and how quickly we go to in-person to virtual, the CDC put out a new report about a new syndrome impacting young kids. It's called MISCs. You and I were talking about it before. And kids could have a mild case of COVID, but then all of a sudden end up with a longer-term problem months later. This is going to scare a lot of parents. Should this give us second thoughts about opening schools too quickly?
Well, I think it shows that we're still learning a lot about this disease. And while it is definitely true that kids are far less affected than adults, there are some small portion of kids who will have very serious consequences from this. So we have to do whatever we can to make schools as safe as possible. We can never say that opening a school will be perfectly safe, but what we need to do is drive transmission down in communities where schools are going to be opening. And if the transmission is still very high in those communities, there is going to be higher risk for cases to appear in schools right off the start. So I think we have to put it in perspective. It's a very serious syndrome. It happens to small numbers of kids overall, but for those kids, it's a very, very, very serious problem.
Tom Inglesby from Johns Hopkins, one of our experts that we have on here regularly. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
Hello from Washington, I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.